We're going to transition to a fireside chat, and I'm going to bring Frank up. And after we do our fireside chat, we'll do that for 30 minutes, and he will share his industry expertise, and then we'll go to lunch next door. So please help me welcome Frank Tirado with Calamos, and our focus on the marketing transformation. Oh yeah, I should give you a chance to go back to your seats. That's true. Yes.
Test. 1, 2.
Alrighty, everybody settled? Okay, we are perfect. We're going to talk about marketing transformation and what you need to do relative to moving to scale and providing support. And your story is, and your organization is pretty, and the velocity at which you're getting things done, I think is great for sharing. So share with me your background, where you started, and then how you started leading the transformation process.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I got a little nervous. As soon as they announced my name, I thought people were leaving. So it was nice to go
Surprise!
back to your seat. Exactly. Well, my path to this stage is an unusual one. I wanted to be a derivatives trader after college, so I came to Chicago and immediately got a job at Cboe Global Markets. And after 2 years on a trading floor, it became clear that I didn't want to be a derivatives trader. And so, but I had this body of knowledge of options and futures and strategies and the math all behind it. And I was like, how can I monetize this? Well, I got pulled into a meeting because Frank knew the strategies and the regulatory backing of what we were discussing, and it was a marketing meeting. And so my first job in marketing was for the Cboe Global Markets, which is one of the largest derivatives exchanges here in Chicago. And some of you may know that Chicago is considered the risk management capital of the world. So I took that body of knowledge and worked at Cboe for a number of years, and basically worked with a professional group of investors and traders. So we did extensive marketing campaigns, educational campaigns. Then I was wanting to do something different, and I struck gold, and this is just pure luck. E-Trade at the time was thinking of building out its derivatives business. And so they got a group of different folks from across the board, capital markets, marketing, and all, and I landed a job at E-Trade during the time when the E-Trade baby was born. So, I learned a very valuable lesson about marketing. At the time, Nick Utton was his chief marketing officer. He's a really burly rugby body guy from South Africa, very demanding. But what he did was extraordinary. He made sure that everyone in the marketing department, 112 people, touched the baby. So we all have on our resumes that we had something to do with a project with the E-Trade baby, which was a lot of fun when you have $150 million to work with. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. So that was a lot of fun. By far the most exciting times. I learned a ton because I went from a very specialized, specific, complex marketing area to E-Trade. Then I leveraged that and monetized that and led trader marketing for TD Ameritrade. At the time, 60% of all revenues were from the trading that was done by investors. And so I led that marketing group for a few years. It was nice to have a big budget there as well. Then from that job, I went to more of an industry group, which is the Options Clearing Corporation. And the Options Clearing Corporation is the largest clearinghouse of equity derivatives. And I headed up the Options Industry Council, which represented the trillion-dollar industry for options trading in the United States, which was also very interesting. But again, it was the blending of this body of knowledge with now this learning how to be creative in the context of E-Trade, and then moving from there. And then while I was at OCC, I dug into the numbers because I liked them, and I started to see this emerging trend of options being traded on exchange-traded funds. And so that intrigued me. I was like, well, exchange-traded fund is an emerging, business, but options trading is much more specialized, and I followed it for a few years, and I immediately made the pivot to deciding to be a marketer for exchange-traded funds. And since that time, assets in the United States have gone from 3 to 4 trillion to, as of September 27th, 14 trillion globally. It's expected to grow to 20 trillion, depending on who you read, within the next 5 to 7 years. And so that's what I do for Calamos. I lead the exchange-traded fund marketing for Calamos. And so that gives you an idea of just a snapshot of my career.
Great, thank you. I would think that, and we will, before we leave stage, talk about how often you were delivering new products. So curious about perhaps the cultural shift of, and any challenges you may have faced as you were integrating a new view and a long view for success, and how you overcame those.
No, right. So what was interesting in all those jobs, I was either in a position of rapid growth or transformation. And so when this opportunity at Calamos Investments, which is a 50-year brand, it's 50-year brand, $50 billion in assets, that they're recognized as the largest alternatives manager in the world. And so they have an established business, but the executive team decided that we are going to build a ETF franchise. And so you have an established brand, very successful. You have a very competent team, and here come the startup team. And that friction was the first challenge, right? So you have this decision to build an ETF franchise. You're starting from literally zero assets. And once we started to begin the planning process, I was even shocked. So during the initial meetings that we had for the product roadmap, most asset managers, as many of you know, would be satisfied with 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 product launches a year. They presented a 20-product launch in 18 months. And we've just completed our 10th ETF launch in 9 months. And so that's the pace we're in. That pace was determined by the executive team down. And so the first challenge was to develop trust with our team and the incumbent team. And so that's what I did for the first 3 to 6 months, is just really build those relationships. And once I received the green light to share the product roadmap, the next thing I felt was that I must let my marketing partners know what the future is going to look like. And we were chatting earlier, and when some folks saw that, some people left. And because you are in startup mode, and it's very different, as you all know, from maintaining an established business. So that was one of the key challenges. initially was just buying in on this very aggressive roadmap.
And then as you look back in terms of, and when did you start the process?
We started, I was hired about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And so about 18 months. And the aggressive part of the product rollout started in May.
So in terms of the branding, the marketing piece, the shift from your more established financial instruments to these financial instruments, can you share more about, how, when you're making a mammoth change like that,
Right.
from a marketing perspective, how do you encompass cross-functionally
Right.
gain market share so that the goals that you have for the ROI are achieved?
No, that's a good question, because when you start at a low base of 0, right, everybody's keeping score, it seems right away. But as of yesterday, we're at 400 million within that call it 16 months. And so that is one of the key indicators, obviously, that the executive team are looking at. But also another challenge was not only getting the marketing buy-in right, everyone on the team throughout the entire marketing organization, and it's relatively small at Calamos, about 35 to 40 person team. But then there's a sales organization of about 80 to 85. That was much more challenging, because you have a very successful sales organization that built a $50 billion franchise, and now you're saying sell an exchange-traded fund that will pay you less. But the executive team was right in that if you look at assets under management for mutual funds, the trend has been downward sloping, and the trend of assets under management in exchange-traded fund has been upward sloping, and it's achieving new highs year after year. So the executive team knows that, in order to kind of be prepared for the next 50 years, we need a very successful ETF franchise. So we worked on the sales team of 80 people, and it was an aggressive internal marketing campaign. So the head of ETFs, myself, and the PMs, we spent an extensive amount of time of just preparing the sales team for whatever they need. And it was interesting to hear the comments about what assets you build for a sales team that's never sold an ETF before. And so we did market research among the group of 80, and we spent hours and hours of hearing how they would tell the story, and then we would translate it into basically what our kit today. And we adjust that accordingly, but that buy-in, and for those of you who are in leadership or aspire to lead, is so important, and you all know this, but when you're moving very fast from 0 to 400 million within a 12 to 14 month period, that becomes much more important. And sometimes you get bumps in the road, and some personalities are a bit more difficult than others, but in the end, it's worth the time and the investment in doing that. And then you move fast.
How did you build resilience and adaptability inside it to that point?
Yeah, it's key, and it's giving the people in the room a voice. Absolutely. And so we get our orders from the executive team, then we have to sell both this marketing organization, the sales organization, and providing them with the psychological safety to say anything, warts and all. And so over the first 6 to 8, 9 months, I worked hard at building those relationships. So when it came time to move fast, they were on board. Again, we're talking about rapid growth, transformation, which we're in, and that's one of the things that we did that really worked.
It's interesting that we've been talking about AI for 2 days, but we're hearing a theme also in terms of transformation and thought leadership around transformation to ensure that everyone's firing on all cylinders. So can you share more about how that view on transformation was significant in not only hitting the numbers, but making sure that you create it. You know, how sometimes you're there. I don't know if you've ever worked with organizations where it feels like you built it on a house of cards. Everybody said yes, and started building so fast that, and you could see where it was going, and then no one in here is shaking their head yes. I've been there. And then you deliver, and you're like, but we need to make sure that these pieces, that we're really doing our due diligence around this so that we don't have a series of problems that hurt or that are an impediment to the client long term.
No, yeah, that's true. What was interesting about the products we were launching, again, you're dealing with an organization that has never launched an exchange-traded fund, and the strategies that we put together not only transformed our organization at Calamos Investments, but the industry. We changed the way in which how our strategies, the strategies called defined outcome strategies, are talked about nationwide, worldwide actually. We pressed to have Bloomberg on its terminal change the language to favor us. So what we did is we launched a set of products that give exposure to the S&P 500, NASDAQ 2000, and Russell 100, but also provide 100% downside protection. And that blows the minds of the average investors. How can I have exposure risk, yet you protect me 100% on a downside? So that had never been done. We did it. Why? Because of the foundation, the 50-year foundation of risk management that Calamos had built through its convertibles expertise, alternatives expertise. And when you get both, CNBC and Bloomberg calling you the same week, you know you struck gold. And so that process of working with our media team to not allow the existing industry define us was a ton of work. If you Google Calamos Investments, structure protection ETFs, you'll see no less than 100 articles that we probably, over the last 6 months, that we had a hand in. And most recent is in the Wall Street Journal, Jason Zweig's iconic column, The Intelligent Investor, mentioned us just this week. So my point in saying all that is that marketing has to work, in my view, very closely with media, not as a passive agent, but an agent and say that we can change the way they talk about our strategies and this, in this case, a category within ETFs. And we also influence Morningstar, which is a powerhouse among investors. We influence Morningstar's. We're trying to get them to change how strategies are categorized, and we're introducing our language to them, and they're open to it. So we have Bloomberg, Morningstar, and that's one way that we did it. But that marketing media connection is the leverage that I would encourage everyone in the room to kind of start seeking and seeing how we can create the narrative that we want versus accepting what's out there.
I like that in a proactive fashion. Well, why don't we open it up to the audience?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Great.
No questions? All righty. So is there any advice that you would share that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, the one thing I would say is if you're in a leadership role or aspire to lead and you are in a rapid growth or transformation situation, definitely empower your people. You can't do it alone. Get out of the way and don't micromanage them. It's just like all the stuff that we learn in our career is true, especially in a rapid growth situation. And I found that just being at Calamos, a year and a half to be true. We have just an extraordinary chief marketing officer, Jessica Fernandez, who's a force of nature. She goes, this is the way we want to go. go at it. And then, of course, she gets buy-in on everything we do, but that freedom is key.
Excellent. Oh, here's some questions. Can we have a mic at the front, please? Right here.
You mentioned you had to do an internal sales job.
Yes.
Because your products were going to be possibly cannibalizing
Correct.
the other side of the business. What were the challenges with that?
No, that's a good question. The key challenges is that you had an expert team of 80 individuals that had focused on, call it 12 strategies, that built it from nothing to 50 billion. So now the main challenge was to help them understand the strategy. And the difficulty of connecting exposure to markets with 100% downside protection was like, they're not going to believe us. It was the key point. So we had our PMs, and I knew the business through the strategies beforehand. So we conducted internal trainings until they got it. And we agreed, again, to give away a little bit of the influence and say, hey, we'll launch aggressively when you guys are ready. And so but that took a tremendous amount of time. Again, the startup mode mentality and meeting with nearly every individual person and then doing group trainings really helped. But that was the key, was to get them convinced that this is part of the next 50 years of Calamos, and also facts. The facts, I presented a chart of mutual fund AUM for the last 40 years, and then I just presented it and walked off the stage. And that was all that needed to be said, and that's why we're launching the exchange traded fund. Not to say that the ETF, the mutual fund, is going away. It's the extension of the powerful Calamos brand into a new space, in this case, exchange-traded funds. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi. To hit the aggressive timelines that you have, what are some of the keys to the cross-functional teams working together? Because lining up marketing and communications and IT, what are some of the keys that are making it happen for you right now?
No, what was interesting when I first got to Calamos Investments, again, you had a very talented, oh my gosh, I would say some of the most talented people I've ever worked with in my life, including E-Trade. But again, they were nursing a very successful $50 billion business. And so one of the key things that I saw, because the business was so established, the current incumbent marketing team was reacting to requests throughout the organization. And here, I knew at this point, they had not known yet that we have a 20-product roadmap for 18 months. And I just pulled something, what I learned from the E-Trade days. The humble strategic brief was the beginning matters the most. And so you have to when you drop that pebble in the pond, it has to be exactly right. And no one was coalescing all the thoughts and energy from all the departments. So that landed on me. So what I did was I developed a strategic brief, strategy brief, creative brief, whoever. I call it the Amazon memo. Jeff Bezos' famous Amazon memo, but I keep it to about 3 pages. And it is on me to describe the strategy, implement, frame it in a marketing context, and then bring in the PMs, the head of business, sales, and marketing, and basically take a hammer to it. And we go at it, everyone, I distributed it to the entire marketing organization. And so it wasn't just the executive team, it was like our interns. And so getting that feedback, I collected that, and we refined the brief. And the moment we did, it was probably on average about 3 or 4 rounds, and it's a lot of work. But once that brief was agreed on, it was like in stone. And then it created an acceleration. Everybody was moving fast. There was no question. And then when questions would arise, I would just forward the brief. And all these things were settled at that point. So again, how does Calamos Investment launch at least one ETF a month? I start with the brief. We get all that done, and then we move fast, very fast.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you, Frank, for talking about scale and
Yes.
acceleration.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.